You have base money, which is the commodity money, as the Austrians say, gold, silver, seashells almost, cowrie shells almost. They didn't quite make it. They certainly didn't last. We know that like even they're ornamental and like people collect shells, like that's not going to work, right? But gold and silver will hold a value in the market, so it still works. Gold and silver, Bitcoin is a part of this base money, by the way, like a UTXO. It's a digital-based money. Doesn't matter that it's not physical. It's a digital-based money.
You think it's there now? Would you say it's generally accepted?
It's, as I call it, I say in my research, a possible future-based money.
Okay,
Possible
getting
future.
close.
Yeah, very, very close.
Is
very
it worth
close.
just defining what is like the monetary base right now?
Sure. Well, so as with everything, it's always a bit complicated when we talk about the fiat system because the central banks kind of do tricks that none of us could do because they have the power of the Congress, the law, legal tender, all the rest. So we can't. Central bank-based money is slightly different, but I'll get there. Yeah, let's do it. But first, I'm going to get there. Just one more sidebar. Okay, so we have base money, gold, silver, Bitcoin is digital-based money. And now let's bring it forward to we have modern societies. Remember how I told you credit was there in the past? It's always going to be there. It's never going away. Credit is never, ever going away. It's within us, okay? It's a promise. The economic term for money that is not base money but is still base money today is called fiduciary media. That is the term. It's never used in Bitcoin. A lot of people just might not
Never
know
heard it. You ever heard it?
Nope.
Fiduciary media.
Okay.
And one of my
Like it.
economists I really enjoy reading, George Selgin, he was the first guest on our podcast. I very much encourage your listeners to check out our first episode we did many years ago with him. We went through all these steps, just make sure I understood it, the assets, liabilities, whatever. The term is fiduciary media. So the Eurodollar is a subset of fiduciary media. What is fiduciary media? It's basically money that is issued by a fiduciary. It's issued by something like a bank. So it could be a European bank, American bank, whatever. And it trades like money. It's denominated in the same thing like money, whether that be ounces of gold, tons of gold in former days, right? When we're back talking about like trading, right? And we had to settle deals. And you're in, like I said, the East Indies, you're going back to London. Whether it be in ounces of gold or whether it be in the pound sterling, which was originally sterling silver, and then it went to gold, and then it was nothing. But now the pound itself has become this sort of unit of account. And so fiduciaries can issue money. It trades like money. It is money. It's a generally accepted medium of exchange, but it's issued by a fiduciary, by a centralized third party, to use Bitcoin speak. So that's fiduciary media. And the Eurodollar is a subset of fiduciary media. Any bank account, anytime you have an account, it's fiduciary media. So deposit account, savings account, time deposit account, you talked about you have a Eurodollar account, all fiduciary media. So the distinction is base money is something that is an asset first, a commodity. We can see it. We don't necessarily have to touch it, but we can see it. We know that it's there. We can verify it. You can assay it in the case of gold and silver, versus everything else, which is fiduciary media. It is issued by a third party. Both are money, and both have always been money. And also to bring it back to the credit discussion, all fiduciary media is a form of credit, but not all credit is fiduciary media. All fiduciary media is a form of credit. It's as Jeff was saying to you, a ledger-based transaction. Sure. Assets and liabilities. It happened all through, that's happened since, the merchants of Venice times, double entry accounting, all that stuff. That's fiduciary media. And that trades like money today, fiduciary media. And the main achievements, let's say, and it's a bit, the conspiratorial view, but a lot of people know that there was no quorum when the Federal Reserve was passed and everything else. But the achievement, let's say, of the international bankers, if we're going to be very, very disingenuous to them, which I think they, I'm not about defending bankers at all, unless it's in the case of free banking, which are unencumbered by central banks. But sort of this achievement now is we have central banks all around the world which have kind of taken over this role of both being the main conduit of base money, and also when they issue their base money, fiduciaries have to link back and settle in finality with them as a central bank. Every bank, your bank, every bank in Britain has an account. It's called a master account in the United States. They have an account with the central bank. So in Britain, with the Bank of England, they all have an account, the master account. And you take all the fiduciary media, which is everything, PayPal, Venmo, checks. How is the checks market here in Britain? People still use them or not really?
They're dead now.
Yeah,
I mean,
still
I know
working in the US.
I've got a checkbook. I haven't written a check in years. I received a check recently, and my bank doesn't even accept it.
Big fee to cash it. Maybe not even accept
No,
it.
they don't
Interesting.
accept it because I'm with a bank that doesn't have a high street branch.
Wow.
It's
So-
like I would have to post it to them. They
So
just don't.
checks are even losing status as that's fiduciary media losing status as
Yeah.
money
The company
because
you
it's
issue.
not generally accepted.
Well, it was a dividend for shares. So what they do is they just issue everyone a check. I had to phone them up and say, I can't, my bank doesn't accept checks,
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, we'll have to do a direct bank transfer. And
Yeah.
I've got a feeling I had to pay for it.
Yeah, you probably did. Oh, it's there. I remember in the Baltic banks in Eastern Europe, like they went digital right after Soviet Union, like so they never had any checks, and to cash a check was like 10 euros.
No, I think this one was the
cash.
reverse. I think I had to pay to not have a check. Strangely enough,
Oh,
because their process is like they've got I don't know how many people who own shares, but say it's thousands, tens of thousands
Yeah.
of people. The easiest thing is just I assume they just have a machine that just mail merges and prints out the checks.
Mm.
And I had to go and say, I'm sure I had to do it. I tried to pay like £12 or something.
yeah.
Motherfuckers.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So it's always confusing. Economists love. I mean, Bitcoin Twitter. This is what it's all about, right? Is what is money? What is the unit account? Whatever. Money is always and everywhere generally accepted medium of exchange. That is the X factor. It can be a store of value. It can be a bad store of value in the case of current fiat money. Oh, I didn't maybe finish the bow. So central banks, which the Fed, Bank of Canada was formed in the 1930s, one of kind of the last major countries to succumb to a central bank. They had a very free banking history, which is very interesting, which George Selgin writes a lot about, which I really like, which is banking systems that were free of a central bank. But unfortunately, even though I like those systems and probably like them less than George, even though George has written a lot about Bitcoin too, they've shown to not work. They've shown to succumb to the state intervention. So now every state has a central bank. So now on a central bank ledger balance sheet, the old fiduciary media, that is the banknotes. So, in Scotland, there's still different banknotes from different banks, like with different colors, different pictures, right? There, of course, it's all pound sterling denominated, right?
But they're a pain in the ass as well.
The different colors or what?
No, if you have a Scottish...
Scottish banknote?
Yeah, right, and you're trying to use it in the UK, some people just don't want to accept it.
Really? Wow. So
Yeah.
even fiat, I did not know that. I did not know that. So
Yeah,
even
they don't like
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are funny about it. I think it's more that they think they're being ripped off. They don't know
Yeah.
it's real
Yeah.
because you don't see them that much in the UK or in
Yeah.
England.
So that's very interesting. We're rapidly digitizing here.
Yeah.
And
No, but that's been the case. That's been the case because you have them in you have northern like the Welsh don't,
Yeah.
but they have northern
Ireland and Scottish banks.
pounds. But
Pounds.
I think the Scottish £20 note's only worth like £19, isn't it?
Is that true?
I think so. Yeah,
it's a black market for it. But
it's a down market.
so
I'm taking the piss, Daddy.
Yes,
you
I
don't
know
have to
you're
look it
taking
up.
the piss.
Fuck it.
so this is the interesting thing is that these central banks have sort of corralled this section of fiduciary media, which was banknotes. Banknotes. This has happened in the United States in the post-Civil War era, and even before the post-Civil War era. We had the Continental, which that was a centrally issued currency of the colonial times. But different banks would issue different notes, and they actually worked quite well. Like in Canada and Sweden and Scotland in particular, you could be all across the country, and unlike today, you could go from one branch to another branch all the way across the country. You face no discount as far as from par if you wanted to ask for gold with that note. No discount at all, face value. Whereas in the United States, which was you couldn't branch in the United States, it was a very bad, they didn't have a central bank in the 1800s, but you couldn't branch. So one state bank, you could have a dollar from, Fifth Third Bank in Ohio and take it to somewhere in South Carolina. You would face a discount if you tried to deposit that and say, get withdrawal, the specie as it is called, but the bullion, the gold, if you wanted to withdraw. You'd face these sort of arbitrages, let's say.
Because
there was no branching, and so the systems, they didn't necessarily like, all right, I gotta take your note now, I gotta give you the gold, I gotta hold on and wait, and then I gotta go back and like wait for my other liabilities with you, because, and this is what the argument that they use for central banking is, everybody just needs this clear with one central bank every day, and then that's how that money works. But all that, the word for all that is fiduciary media. It's a fiduciary. You can have checks, bills of credit, it was called in the industrial revolution of Britain. They had actually 3 metals. It was tri-metal system. They had gold, silver, and copper, like a bronze alloy. But they also had a ton of fiduciary media. Like, people still didn't want the coin, just like today. They didn't want the coins. They prefer the bills. And it'd be better if you had a bank that had a bill that it was accepted at many places, or at least it was familiar, and you could take it around to different merchants, and you could either pay for it, or you could take it to a bank in another, your own branch in another place, deposit it, and know that like that deposit's going to work when you go back home. So notice, by the way, you can travel with fiduciary media always, and that only works in like advanced societies where fiduciary media only works in this way as we advance. And it's interesting that you kind of, the thing that I told you was important for traveling originally, which was base money, now we're so advanced and also so monopolized because there's only central banks anymore. We don't actually have a need for gold and silver as base money anymore.
So would you say gold is even money anymore? Because you say generally accepted. I don't know anyone who would accept gold as payment.
Well, the problem there as well is it's legal tender to only use the other stuff. If the legal tender wasn't there, which is a world we're never going to see, right? Because governments love to control the purse. If there was if the legal tender did not exist, I can't tell you for sure you wouldn't have gold as money.
I would say Bitcoin is now more generally accepted as payment than gold.
I agree with you.
When you
but
actually
Bitcoin's also, as Friedrich Hayek says, in a roundabout way, it's getting around the state regulation.
Yeah, but that's quite interesting. We got to a point where, you know, Bitcoin's market value might not have reached that of gold, but its utility as money is definitely surpassed gold.
Yeah. And as a digital commodity, it clearly makes sense. It clearly makes sense today that we're going digital. We don't need paper at all.
Yes. Mr. Schiff, are you fucking listening? Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so, that's the idea.
So in the euro-dollar system, do we know like what percentage of dollars are held in non-US accounts versus US accounts? We don't.
No.
So it's too opaque.
As Bill Browder, actually, who we've talked about, we will speak about in another show. He said in his book, because he deals with a lot of these cross-border flows with Russia and wherever, he says that if there's a dollar transaction, it theoretically hits the New York Fed at some place because there's a correspondent bank that's going to keep track of the dollars, and that correspondent bank will report back to the U.S. But that's only the transaction, right? The transaction, as far as the value, right? Like think Panama Papers, Paradise Papers. As far as banks that are willing to open up, like, hey, mate, you want a dollar-based account? I'm a bank in the Caymans. Sure, you can have it. Like, as far as the value, that's very opaque. No one knows. And that hasn't been known for decades. So maybe the transactions, I don't know this for sure, but maybe theoretically the transactions do, once you actually make a payment, a wire, SWIFT, you can do euro-based SEPAs, or sorry, dollar-based SEPAs as well. But once you make the SEPA or the wire, the SWIFT, whatever, theoretically this transaction value makes its way back to the New York Fed. But the full value of that account, there's no way that they know at all about that. And they haven't known that for decades. Like, you could just be some billionaire in the south of France who wanted to open up a dollar-based account in the 60s. No way they would know that. Now it's like the Paradise and Panama Papers, I'm already forgetting. It's probably close to 30 trillion now was in the value. I think it's like ongoing, some of these leaks and stuff. But was like 20 trillion a while back, many years back now, like 20 trillion. And of course, not all of those were Eurodollars. This could have been like stocks, bonds. I didn't do the full research, right? But $20 trillion of value was estimated to be in those accounts of Panama and Paradise Papers type leaks. Most of those are probably Eurodollars, dollar-based deposits that were held by banks.
How much, this is where I get into the areas I really don't understand, but how much of the dollars in the Eurodollar system, are there large parts that could actually not actually exist? They're just balances that exist somewhere, but the liabilities...
None of it exists. This is where I'm going to sound exactly like Snyder.
So,
none of it exists.
None of it exists, but what I'm saying is that the liabilities can be met, but is there a scenario actually like lots of it's just fake? It doesn't exist?
Define as you want to...
So,
as you want to know, what would it mean it doesn't exist?
Like if there was a run on the Eurodollar,
sure,
what would happen?
That's any bank for sure. And this is the fractional reserve banking thing. And again,
so
people like to run with these arguments. Like it shouldn't be a crime that anybody can start a bank, start an institution that works like a bank, and open up an account for anybody. Okay. And the reason that we know that this works is for something that's not related to any of this, and that is the gift card market. Okay. So Amazon. You can get scammed the hell out of some gift cards by some Indians calling you in the UK or the US. They love Amazon gift cards there in India. All right, it works. It's kind of a general accepted medium of exchange in India. It absolutely works. Amazon gift cards, Google gift cards, all the rest. You can scam people, or they can be legitimate. You can go back and claim. And what is backing those? What does it mean to exist? It exists if Amazon legitimately issued it as the fiduciary of the media that they issued. The media was the gift card. They are the fiduciary. And if you can go back later and use it and spend with it and buy real stuff with it, i.e. what Sergey's doing at BitRefill, then it is some form of money. So gift cards do that. There's a company in Canada, I think it's called Canada Tire, Canadian Tire. Our Canadian listeners can inform us here. My understanding in the 80s and 90s is that they had real cash as a form. It was points. It was points basically for shopping at their. They were like a massive Walmart Canadian version. It was not just tires. It's like they had everything. And my understanding is in the 80s and 90s in Canada, you could just take those Canada Tire bucks and go anywhere with it. And the Bank of Canada just let it work because it was a gift card, right? But people really liked it. People collected it. It was a generally accepted medium of exchange. Okay. Canada's different than Yaps. Sure, those Canada Tire things would never work in the US, south of the border. They'd never work in the UK. But in Canada, my understanding was that was a generally accepted medium of exchange. That's private issued money. And this is also how Sergey is scaling Bitcoin with BitRefill. Like 90%, I believe, of his business is gift card. Purchasing gift cards with crypto. All you're doing is scaling up crypto with fiduciary media. You're putting the crypto aside. You're buying fiduciary media, which is the gift cards, and you're buying real stuff. It's a great way to scale. It doesn't involve Lightning, although they accept Lightning now, which is great. Lightning's awesome. We can talk about that, the economic implications of that as well. But it's just, there's a word for all of this. It's not Eurodollar. There's a word that trumps it. It's fiduciary media, and it is everything. It's a gift card. There's these economists since the days of Paul Volcker at the U.S. Fed. They had these M1, M2, M3 classifications. Very boring for most people that don't follow this at all. But if I asked you what bucket of money, M1, M2, M3, would your bank deposit account be in? Would you know?
No, I would guess it would be M2.
M1.
It's M1.
So any demand deposit, and this is always the X factor for Austrians that love full reserve banking. They argue the fractional reserve banking is a fraud, which is not the case. It's just banking. Your demand.
Let's get back onto that because I'm going to want to ask you about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your demand deposit account is part of M1. Also, what's part of M1 is M0, which is the notes that the central bank issues. So the notes plus demand deposits M1. And that's kind of the most liquid, we think, of the most transactional based currency. M2, it varies by country, by the way. They all have different definitions. But M2 is typically retail-based savings accounts and retail-based time deposit accounts and retail-based money market mutual funds. M3 is typically the institutional value of such. So institutional-based savings accounts, time deposit accounts with lots of money, earning lots of interest, and institutional-based money market accounts, plus repurchase agreements, plus Eurodollars. The Fed stopped counting M3 in 2006. So I think I always find it funny as like people say like, oh, well, let's just use M2. It's the most liquid value of money. First of all, M3 is absolutely still there. No one knows what it was. The Fed knew that they were in for trouble. And it's ironic because probably Eurodollars and repurchase agreements were a huge part of the financial crisis in 2008, which all has to do with basically the credit boom and bust that happened from artificially low interest rates. Before that, the Fed itself created. But that's all part of M3. Now, let's even go further with this. That's all fiduciary media. It doesn't matter. It's an account. Yeah, so this is an attempt to create M3. If you look at the source, Danny, if you go down, OECD. That's OECD still does produce this. So you see it goes into today, but it does not. It's just a bad thing. It's not. The Eurodollar's probably, it's at least 30 trillion because the Fed still produces some things that are part of M3. And then some people have said the Eurodollar, including the Eurodollar balances, you could be like 100 trillion. I have no idea. My guess is it's more than 30 trillion, less than 100 trillion. I don't know, 50 trillion. I just don't know.